Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring more stories like this to you.
Neon nightmare. Rain hammered Leo, turning the city's electric glare into a smeared canvas of lurid hues. He faltered, each breath a shallow rasp as he risked a backward glance. The vipers still stalked him, their shapes stark against the luminous deluge. Razor, a silhouette of menace, led the pursuit, his laughter a cruel counterpoint to the storm's roar. His lungs screamed for air, swift though he was. Their pursuit was relentless, fueled by a savage hunger he couldn't fathom. He'd gambled on anonymity during the initiation rite, hoping to dissolve into the marketplace's chaotic heart before the sacrifice itself. But Razor's gaze, sharp as shattered glass, had pierced the crowd. He bolted into a claustrophobic alley, a fetid corridor reeking of decay. At a dead end, the looming brick face, scabbed with peeling posters and defiant graffiti, confirmed it. Yet, desperation trumped reason. The vipers surged into the alley behind him, sealing off retreat. The city's electric luminescence now felt like a taunt, casting grotesque, elongated shadows that mimicked a ghoulish dance. He flattened himself against the icy brick, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. Nowhere left to scamper, little rat, Razor drawled, his voice slick with malice. He strolled forward, boots grinding on shards of glass. The other vipers spread, forming a tightening crescent around Leo like a hangman's knot. Their faces, grotesque masks lit by the flickering signs, reflected malevolence and hungry anticipation. Leo's throat constricted. He had always been slight, easily bruised, fragile. His foster parents had murmured, fragility was a death sentence here. I don't want any trouble, Leo choked out, the words feeble and pathetic even to him. Razor's chuckle was a viper's hiss in the downpour. Trouble? Kid, you are trouble incarnate. You think you can pledge the vipers and then simply waltz away? Disrespect us like that? He spat, the gob landing scant inches from Leo's worn sneakers. We don't look kindly on those who break their vows. I didn't understand what it entailed, Leo stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his fear. He squeezed his eyes shut, craving invisibility, any escape from this waking nightmare. Please, just let me go. I beg you. The leader's features calcified into granite. Let you go? Think this is a child's game. This is about allegiance, about honor, about demonstrating to everyone that the vipers crush weakness like bugs. He nodded to a hulking figure, all shaved head and sprawling tattoos. Educate him. The brute grinned, knuckles popping like firecrackers. He lumbered forward, eyes gleaming with cruel delight. Leo recoiled, his arms rising in a pathetic shield. He could smell the man's sour sweat and cheap aftershave, a stomach-churning cocktail. Please, Leo rasped, tears blurring his vision. Somebody, save me. His plea, thin and reedy, vanished into the urban din. The rain continued its relentless assault, extinguishing any glimmer of hope. He was cornered, trapped. A lamb at the mercy of wolves, the brute lunged, his fist a battering ram of flesh and bone. Leo braced for the inevitable, clamping his eyes shut. A flash of neon pink seared his vision an instant before the sickening thud of impact. Agony exploded behind his eyes, and he staggered back, slamming against the unyielding brick. Razor observed, with clinical detachment, his expression an impassive mask. Boredom almost radiated from him. Leo crumpled, the world tilting on its axis. He tasted iron. The brute drew back his fist, poised to deliver another crippling blow. Help me! Leo screamed, the sound primal and torn from the depths of his despair. He didn't know who he was appealing to, only that it was a cry for salvation. He just needed it to end. He just needed to live. He squeezed his eyes shut again, anticipating the pain, the oblivion. He was insignificant, expendable at a lost cause marked for destruction. Yet, even as the vipers loomed, a spark of rebellion flickered within him. He wouldn't surrender without resistance. He refused to be broken completely. Fear remained, yes, but something else was awakening beneath it. A fragile, tenacious ember of defiance. He remembered his mother's face, a fading portrait of warmth and love, and he knew he had to endure that. He simply had to. the Samaritan. The alley reeked of stale beer and desperation. Leo's whimper cut through the humid night air, a thin thread of sound that snagged on the edge of Jason Statham's awareness. He'd been halfway down the block, heading back to the temporary room he'd rented above the pawn shop. But the sound stopped him cold. He moved silently, a predator drawn to the scent of fear. The shadows deepened around him as he slipped into the narrow passage between two brick buildings. The stench intensified, a cocktail of urine and something metallic, something acrid. Then he saw them point three figures, hulking shapes outlined against the sickly yellow glow of a distant street lamp, were pressing a smaller one against the wall. Leo, he recognized the kid from the corner store, the one with the two big glasses and the nervous hands, the largest of the figures, a mountain of muscle with a shaved head and a viper tattoo snaking up his neck, spat on the ground in front of Leo. "Where's the package, kid? We ain't got all night." Leo's voice trembled. I don't know what you're talking about." Statham moved. Fast. He didn't analyze, didn't hesitate. Years of honed instinct took over. He launched himself forward, a silent blur of controlled aggression. The first viper didn't even have time to react. Statham's elbow connected with the side of his head, a sickening thud that echoed in the confined space. The man crumpled, hitting the ground like a dropped sack of potatoes. The other two vipers turned, surprised, their aggression shifting from Leo to the new threat. One pulled a knife. A glint of steel in the dim light. The other reached inside his jacket. Statham didn't give them a chance. He closed the distance. A whirlwind of fists and feet. He disarmed the one with the knife with a sharp kick to the wrist, sending the weapon skittering across the grimy pavement. Then, a knee to the groin followed by a brutal uppercut. The viper dropped, clutching himself. His face contorted in agony. The third, still fumbling for his weapon, managed to get a pistol half-drawn. Statham grabbed his wrist, twisting with brutal efficiency until the bones popped. A strangled cry escaped the viper's lips as the gun clattered to the ground. Statham didn't stop there. He used the man's own momentum against him, slamming him headfirst into the brick wall. The viper slid down, unconscious. Silence descended, broken only by Leo's ragged breathing and the distant wail of a siren. Statham stood over the fallen figures, his chest heaving, his gaze hard. He felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the cold satisfaction of neutralizing a threat. A ghost of a memory flickered. Another alley, another child, another failure to intervene in time. He pushed it down. This time was different. He turned to Leo, who was huddled against the wall, his eyes wide with terror and disbelief. "You all right?" Statham's voice was gravelly, and used to speaking. Leo just stared, his mouth working soundlessly. He looked like a cornered animal, ready to bolt at the slightest movement. Statham knelt down, trying to appear less menacing. "They hurt you bad?" Leo shook his head, still unable to speak. He pointed to a small cut on his cheek, a thin line of blood trickling down his skin. Statham pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to the boy. "Hold that there. Pressure will stop the bleeding." Leo took the handkerchief, his fingers trembling. He pressed it against the cut, his eyes never leaving Statham's face. "What were they after?" Statham asked, his voice low and steady. Leo hesitated, his gaze darting around the alley. He was still afraid, but something else flickered in his eyes, a spark of hope, maybe even a nascent trust. I don't know," he stammered. "They think I have something that belongs to them." Statham studied him, his expression unreadable. He saw the fear, the confusion, but he also saw something else: intelligence, resilience. The kid was hiding something, but he wasn't inherently bad. "You know who they are, though?" Statham said, stating the obvious. Leo nodded, a single jerky movement. "The vipers." Statham stood up, his gaze sweeping the alley. "You're going to have to be careful. They won't let this go." He knew the vipers. They were like a festering wound on the city, a cancer that spread through the cracks. And they didn't take kindly to interference. He had just made an enemy. Crossfire. The diner, a monument to culinary despair, smelled of scorched brew and faded dreams. Statham nudged a plate of questionable eggs toward Leo, who regarded the offering with open misgivings before cautiously sampling a forkful. He chewed with deliberate slowness, his gaze flickering around the room, never lingering. Fuel up, Statham rumbled. You'll need it. Leo swallowed, his throat working. Need it for what exactly? Statham leaned back, assessing him. The kid looked more like he was 9 than 12, all sharp elbows and coiled nerves. For talking straight. For telling me what in God's name is going on. Leo poked at the dubious breakfast, his silence a wall of worry. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Statham exhaled heavily. He hated these charades with kids, but answers were a must. The welcoming committee from last night. Who were they? Leo recoiled, eyes widening. Nobody. Just some guys. Guys who knew your name intimately. Guys who were intensely interested in what you were carrying. Statham let the implication hang in the air. Vipers, weren't they? Defeat settled over Leo. He shoved the plate away, the eggs untouched. Yes. And you bolted. Why? They want me to work for them. Leo breathed, the words lost in the clatter of cutlery. Statham closed the distance between them. Work as what? Leo hesitated, then blurted, a runner. Errands. Carrying stuff. Statham's gaze sharpened. Drugs involved. Leo dipped his head, his expression a study in shame. Sometimes. Other times just messages. And that didn't appeal to you? No way. I've seen what they do to people who cross them. Or try to walk away. Leo's voice cracked with emotion. Who is the Viper crew beefing with? Statham pressed, getting straight to the point. The Dragons. Leo spat, the name laced with loathing. They own the north side. Vipers run the south. It's a constant battle for turf, for everything. Statham was familiar with the city's fractured geography, the unseen borders that defined each crew's territory. But he hadn't grasped how deeply they infested everything, how they exploited kids such as Leo. And where do you come in? Nowhere good, Leo said bleakly. I used to live close to Dragonlands. But after my parents. He broke off, a curtain of pain dropping over his face. Statham watched the torment play behind his eyes. I ended up on the streets. The Vipers found me. Claimed I had wheels. Wheels good enough to ferry packages between the Vipers and the Dragons? Statham surmised. Leo nodded, unable to meet his gaze. They grab kids because the cops look past them most of the time. So you're caught in the middle now, Statham concluded. A pawn in their deadly game. A wave of anger pulsed through him, a cold fury directed at those who would so casually ruin a child's life for their own gain. He studied Leo's face, noting the fear, yet also the fragile glint of hope that flickered there since Statham had intervened, and he knew what he had to do. They'll be hunting you, Statham confirmed, his voice resolute. Vipers and dragons alike. They won't let you just disappear. Leo's complexion lost all color, eyes huge. What am I supposed to do? Statham reached across the table, covering Leo's trembling hand with his own, his touch unexpectedly comforting. You're sticking with me. Leo stared, disbelief battling a nascent hope. But why? You don't even know me. Statham locked eyes with the boy, seeing not only terror, but an indomitable spirit smoldering beneath. Because someone needs to step up. And because you deserve infinitely more than this mess. He paused, his voice hardening. And because I loathe bullies. Leo swallowed hard, his voice a bare thread. But they're armed. They have guns. So do I, Statham stated, his tone low and menacing. He knew he was painting a target on his back, inviting the attention of two merciless crews. But he didn't care. He wouldn't let them sink their claws into this kid. This means you're also in danger now? Leo whispered, concern etching his young face. Statham's lips curved in a grim smile. Danger is a familiar haunt, it's where I do my best. He squeezed Leo's hand in reassurance. Now, finish your less than stellar cuisine. We have work ahead of us. The mirth vanished as Statham surveyed the area through the diner's window. He was sure of it. This was just the beginning of a gang war, under siege. The first sign wasn't a knock or a shout at it was the sickening crack of splintering wood as the apartment door buckled inward. a dark fissure spider webbing across its surface. Statham, halfway through assembling a makeshift barricade of overturned furniture, swore under his breath. Leo, crouched behind the sofa, whimpered, his eyes wide and reflecting the muted light from the single lamp Statham had left on. "Stay down, Leo," Statham barked, grabbing a heavy cast-iron skillet from the kitchen. Countered that he'd seen enough action to know that a locked door was only a suggestion to these people. A boot slammed against the door again, and this time the frame screamed in protest. It gave way with a final, groaning shudder, revealing 3 figures silhouetted against the dim hallway. The leader, a bulky man with a shaved head and a silver tooth glinting in the gloom, stepped forward. "Razor." "Statham!" Razor's voice was a gravelly rasp. "Come out nice and easy. We just want the kid." Statham didn't reply. He gripped the skillet tighter, his knuckles white. Razor wasn't here for a conversation. Razor chuckled, a mirthless sound. "All right then, have it your way." He nodded to the 2 figures behind him, and they surged forward. One carried a crowbar, the other a length of thick chain. The crowbar man swung first, aiming a vicious blow at Statham's head. Statham ducked, the crowbar whistling past his ear, and retaliated with a swift, brutal swing of the skillet. The metal connected with a sickening thud against the man's temple. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. The chain whistled through the air, forcing Statham to lunge backward. It wrapped around a table lamp, sending it crashing to the floor in a shower of sparks and shattered glass. The smell of ozone stung his nostrils. "Leo, get to the bathroom," Statham yelled, his voice tight with urgency. "Lock the door and stay quiet." Leo, trembling, scrambled on his hands and knees towards the relative safety of the bathroom. He didn't need to be told twice. He slammed the door shut and fumbled with the flimsy lock. Statham dodged another blow from the chain. This guy was quicker, more agile than the first. He feinted left, then right, trying to create an opening. He grabbed a cushion from the sofa and hurled it at the chain-wielding attacker, momentarily disrupting his rhythm. Razor watched the fight with cold amusement that he hadn't even bothered to draw his weapon, a wicked-looking switchblade he kept tucked in his boot. That he trusted his boys to handle a washed-up nobody like Statham. The chain snaked out again, this time catching Statham across the forearm. That a searing pain shot up his arm, and he stumbled. The attacker pressed his advantage, swinging the chain again, aiming for Statham's head. Just then, a high-pitched yell pierced the air. "Get away from him, Leo!" Statham glanced towards the bathroom doorway. Leo stood there, eyes blazing with a defiance that belied his trembling hands. He was holding something, a can of hairspray and a lighter. "Don't, Leo!" Statham shouted. "It's too dangerous." But Leo wasn't listening. He aimed the hairspray can at the attacker and flicked the lighter. A jet of flame erupted from the can, engulfing the man's face in a fiery burst. The attacker screamed, dropping the chain and clawing at his burning face. Razor's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with fury. He'd underestimated the kid. He pulled out his switchblade, the blade snapping open with a menacing click. "You little brat!" Razor spat, stalking towards Leo. Statham, ignoring the pain in his arm, launched himself at Razor, tackling him to the ground. They wrestled on the floor, Razor's switchblade flashing dangerously close to Statham's face. Statham pinned Razor's wrist to the floor, his own strength surprising himself. "Get out of here, Razor!" Statham growled, his voice a low rumble. "Take your boys and leave. This ends now." Razor stared up at Statham, his eyes filled with a venomous hatred. "This isn't over, Statham," he hissed. "You've made a powerful enemy." Statham didn't reply. He simply increased the pressure on Razor's wrist until he heard a sharp crack. Razor screamed in agony. "Now get out," Statham repeated, his voice devoid of emotion. Razor, cradling his broken wrist, scrambled to his feet, dragging his unconscious comrade with him. The chain-wielding attacker was still writhing on the floor, his face a mass of burns. Razor kicked him viciously. "Get up, you idiot!" he snarled. "We're leaving." He glared at Statham and Leo one last time, a promise of vengeance burning in his eyes. Then he turned and limped out of the apartment, leaving behind a trail of destruction and the lingering smell of fear and burned hairspray. Statham stood there, breathing heavily, his body aching, and looked at Leo. The boy was still shaking, but there was a flicker of something new in his eyes, a spark of courage, perhaps, forged in the crucible of fear, city of shadows. The fire escape, a corrosive orange against the brick, groaned its displeasure as Statham descended. Leo clung to his back like a barnacle, each rung tested before bearing their combined weight from below. The Viper's frustrated bellows rose, coarse and laced with venom. He moved with practiced speed, the aged metal complaining underfoot. They hit the alley's grimy floor, the impact momentarily stealing Leo's breath. "You all right?" Statham's voice, a hushed rasp, betrayed his concern. Leo nodded, eyes wide saucers. The alley assaulted the senses, acrid, stale, a far cry from the sanitized air of the apartment. "Keep close," Statham murmured, guiding Leo behind him. "This city has ears, and 1,000 voices." Wailing sirens, the guttural growl of engines, snatched fragments of conversation. They melted into the gloom, hugging the buildings, seeking refuge in the narrow spaces. Statham's senses were a taut wire, seeking any hint of pursuit. "Where are we headed?" Leo whispered, barely audible above the urban thrum. "Toward somewhere better," Statham replied, his gaze constantly sweeping their surroundings. He had no destination in mind, only the imperative to keep moving. A spark of crimson caught his attention. 2 Vipers, draped against a wall plastered with graffiti, cigarettes glowing like malevolent fireflies, kept watch across the street. Statham yanked Leo back into the dense shadow of a recessed doorway. "Dragons?" Leo breathed, gesturing the other way. 3 figures clad in emerald emerged from a pawn shop, their expressions carved from granite. The pincer closing. Statham swore silently. He needed to scramble the board. His eyes landed on overflowing dumpsters. Seizing a chunk of brick, he hurled it with pinpoint accuracy. The ensuing crash of metal and refuse drew the attention of both factions. "Go!" Statham barked, seizing Leo's hand and propelling him into a sinuous alleyway. They bolted, the pursuing footfalls echoing behind them. Soon joined by the unmistakable whine of motorcycle engines, the alley disgorged them into a vibrant market square. A sensory explosion of color and aroma. Vendors shouted their prices, their voices battling the throbbing music emanating from nearby stalls. Statham navigated the throng, exploiting the disorder. "Head down," he instructed, nudging Leo towards a stall ablaze with fabrics. He snatched a length of crimson silk, draping it over Leo's head like a makeshift veil at a fleeting disguise. Nothing more. As they pushed through the press, Statham collided with a man laden with papers. The documents cascaded onto the cobblestones. "Hey, watch it!" the man barked, his face reddened with annoyance. "My mistake," Statham mumbled, helping him gather the scattered sheets. As he did, a headline screamed from one. "Councilman Blackwood implicated in illegal arms deal." A grainy photograph showed a man resembling the councilman shaking hands with a known Viper enforcer. He palmed one of the flyers. Its significance was unclear, but intuition prickled his skin. The approaching roar of engines intensified. The Vipers and Dragons were closing the net. Statham spotted a delivery truck, its rear doors slightly ajar. Parked nearby, he hauled Leo towards it. "In," he ordered, urgency tightening his voice. Leo hesitated, fear briefly flickering in his gaze. "I don't know." "Now, Leo," Statham snapped, brooking no argument. "Just trust me." Leo clambered into the truck's dark interior, Statham right behind him. He slammed the doors shut, sealing them in temporary blackness. The engine roared to life, the truck lurching forward, just as their pursuers, faces twisted with fury, stormed into the market square. They were safe for the moment. But Statham knew this was but a sliver of respite. The city of shadows was brimming with secrets, and he was just beginning to expose them. And his gut told him Councilman Blackwood was squarely at the heart of it all. Unlikely alliance. The alley reeked of stale beer and desperation. Statham pressed Leo closer, the boy trembling against his side like a trapped bird. The Vipers had them cornered, their faces illuminated by the flickering neon sign of a nearby bar, glinting off the knives they brandished. But before the Vipers could close in, a new sound shattered the tense silence. The low growl of powerful engines, headlights, bright as judgment, flooded the alley. 3 black motorcycles, customized to a menacing perfection, roared to a halt, blocking the Vipers' escape route. riders dismounted with fluid grace. Each clad in dragon-emblazoned leather, to their head stood a woman whose presence commanded instant respect, Madame Xian. She was a study in contrasts. Elegant silk pantsuit, severe expression, and a dragon tattoo that coiled around her left wrist, disappearing beneath the cuff. "Razor," she said, her voice smooth as silk but laced with steel. "I'm disappointed, resorting to such pedestrian tactics." Razor, the Viper leader, spat on the ground. "Dragons, always sticking your noses where they don't belong." "On the contrary," Madame Xian replied, her gaze flicking to Statham and Leo. "This situation interests us." She turned to Statham, her eyes assessing him with unnerving accuracy. "You have interfered in a matter that concerns us all. Razor's ambition is becoming disruptive." Statham remained wary. "And you're offering help? Let's call it a temporary alignment of interests," she said. "Razor has overstepped. He seeks to expand his territory, and his methods are crude. He's attracting unwanted attention. It's bad for business. Why business?" Leo, peeking from behind Statham's leg, whispered, "Are they good guys?" Statham squeezed his shoulder. "There are no good guys here, Leo. Just different shades of bad." Madame Xian inclined her head slightly, as if acknowledging his cynicism. "Razor believes he can take what he wants. He believes he can challenge the established order. He is wrong. We can offer you safe passage, Mr. Statham. Mr. Statham, and protection for the BOY.IN return. You will tell us everything you know about Razor's plans." Razor snarled, "Don't listen to her. She's playing you. She'll use you both and then feed you to the dogs." Statham studied Madame Xian's face, searching for any sign of deception. He saw only cold calculation. But he also saw a chance, however slim, to get Leo out of this mess. "And what happens when we've told you what we know? Then our paths diverge," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "We deal with Razor. You disappear. Everyone wins. Except, of course, Razor." He didn't like it. He didn't trust her. But Leo's safety was paramount. "What makes you think I'd trust you?" he challenged. A ghost of a smile touched Madame Xian's lips. "You don't. But you have no other choice, do you? Razor wants you dead. We simply want him contained. For now." Statham looked down at Leo, whose wide eyes pleaded with him. He knew this was a gamble. He was trading one devil for another. But he couldn't risk Leo's life. "All right," he said, his voice tight. "We have a deal." Madame Xian nodded curtly. "Excellent. My men will escort you." She gestured to two of the bikers, who revved their engines impatiently. "Let us be gone before Razor loses what little control he possesses." As Statham climbed onto one of the bikes, Leo clinging to him tightly, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a pact with the devil. The alley vanished in a blur of speed and noise as they sped away, leaving Razor and his gang simmering in their defeat. He risked a glance behind him. Razor was screaming, his face contorted with rage, but Madame Xian remained impassive, a queen surveying her conquered kingdom. He knew, with chilling certainty, that he and Leo were now pawns in a much larger game. And he had no idea what the rules were. Warehouse assault. "All right, kid," Statham rumbled, flattening a tattered city map against the rain-slicked hood of a pilfered sedan. The damp metal mirrored the hazy glow of a distant diner. "Showtime. Viper Central. Decade-abandoned textile mill. Remember the schematics." Leo, despite Statham's borrowed jacket, still trembled. His pupils were dilated. Main entrances hot, but a loading bay around backs dim. Sparser security cams. "Electronics we can circumvent," Statham countered, gesturing towards a refuse-strewn alley. "Pincer movement. Divides their forces. You're on standby till I initiate." Leo's Adam's apple bobbed. "Initiate how? Instinct will guide you." Statham's tone was granite. He pressed a well-worn phone into Leo's hand. "Preset. Single button. If hell breaks loose, punch it. Capiche?" The device felt like a cold stone in Leo's grip. Doubt burrowed deep. Statham was waltzing into an inferno. And he expected Leo, a reed in the wind, to be backup? Statham caught the trepidation. You possess intel, kid. The floor plan. That trumps firepower. Have faith. He cuffed Leo's shoulder. A touch that walked a tightrope between assurance and alarm. Statham dissolved into the gloom. Leaving Leo to grapple with the drizzle and his rising panic, he studied the map, conjuring the mill, the vipers, Razor's malevolent grin. He had to follow through. For both their sakes. The signal erupted prematurely. A sequence of concussions convulsed the night, chased by the rapid-fire hammering of automatic weapons. Leo's pulse surged. This was real. He sidled along the shadowed alley, the phone a painful pressure point in his palm. Gaining the loading dock, he saw the promised laxity and security. Only a pair of sentries sketched against the faint interior spill. Statham must have neutralized the front line. Inhaling sharply, Leo inched closer. He recalled Razor bragging of their fortress, laser tripwires and pressure plates guarding their hoard. He also remembered the bypass panel, masquerading as a fire alarm. Close to the loading bay door, he reached the box, his fingers fumbling as he forced it open with a scrap of rusted metal scavenged from the ground. Inside, a nest of colored wires. Razor's words echoed. Main grid, bypass. Blue first, then red. Gunfire intensified. Statham needed an assist. He cast aside his fear, seized the blue wire and snipped it. A shower of sparks. He then severed the red. A low thrum replaced the air, followed by a series of mechanical clicks. The laser net had collapsed. He squeezed inside, hugging the ground. The warehouse was a pandemonium of strobing lights, scattered cargo, and bellowed threats. Statham was a force of nature, a whirlwind of precise violence. Dismantling vipers with ruthless efficiency. Leo glimpsed one of the thugs raising his weapon to ambush Statham. Acting on instinct, Leo snatched up a length of discarded pipe and hurled it with every ounce of strength he possessed. It connected with the viper's skull, felling him like a tree. Statham flickered a glance at Leo, surprise momentarily etched on his features, before refocusing on the fray. Razor materialized, his features twisted into a mask of fury. Statham, you believe you can simply stroll in and pilfer my assets? He spat, hate blazing in his gaze. And you, little parasite. My regret is not silencing you when opportunity presented itself. Razor charged, a blade flashing. Statham met him head-on. Their confrontation a ferocious ballet of steel and sinew. Leo, paralyzed by dread, looked on as they wrestled, each impact a testament to their deep-seated loathing. He knew inaction was no longer an option. He recalled the mill's layout, the location of the emergency shut-off. Cutting the power could tip the scales. He bolted, weaving around obstacles and prone bodies, the gunfire a relentless assault on his ears. He reached the switch, threw it, and plunged the warehouse into absolute blackness. Screams broke out. Disoriented cries filled the void. The silence hung, thick with anticipation. Then, a single gunshot, another followed, when the backup generators kicked in. Casting the scene in a sickly yellow glow, Statham stood over Razor, the Viper boss slumped and unmoving. A thread of blood tracing a path down his temple. Statham surveyed Leo, his expression unreadable. You performed admirably, kid, he stated, his voice gruff yet tinged with something akin to respect. Leo, still trembling, mustered a faint grin. He had stared down his terror, and he had endured, perhaps, just perhaps. He was beginning to place his faith in this man who had rescued him from the abyss, betrayal and confrontation. The air within the derelict warehouse tasted of aged iron and lingering death. Razor's grin flashed, the gold inlay in his tooth winking in the meager light filtering through grime-streaked panes. Well, the star attraction arrives. Had my doubts you possessed the nerve. Statham's jaw clenched. His gaze swept the perimeter, cataloging the Viper pack, circling with predatory anticipation. Leo was conspicuously absent. Where's Leo, Razor? Patience. Friend. A commodity you seem to lack. Interfering with my operations. A daring gambit, Statham. Razor popped his knuckles, the staccato cracks echoing in the vast space. Foolhardy, but undeniably bold. Leo's collateral damage. Not part of your operations. He's a kid. A harsh bark of laughter erupted from Razor. Everyone becomes part of the equation eventually. Now, Shall we begin? He surged forward, a swift blur, a switchblade arcing in the gloom. Statham swayed, the keen edge singing past his temple. Retaliation came as a blunt hammer blow, his right fist connecting squarely with Razor's cheekbone. Razor reeled, composure momentarily fractured, eyes now blazing with animosity. The ensuing clash was a storm of rapid strikes, a brutal dance of annihilation conducted beneath the Viper's hungry gazes. Statham moved with honed precision, each impact delivered with focused intensity. Razor, fueled by arrogance and venom, fought with unrestrained ferocity, a whirlwind of reckless motion. A voice sliced through the din. Statham! Stop this! Leo, shackled by a Viper near a corroded support beam, a pistol pressed to his skull. Tears traced clean paths down his dirty face. Please, he choked out, his voice a fragile tremor. Just do whatever they ask. Statham's fist remained poised mid-swing, frozen. A smirk stretched Razor's bloodied lips. Clever boy, witness, Statham? Everybody has a weakness. The calculus was agonizing. He could subdue Razor. He knew it, but Leo slowly, he lowered his arms. What do you want? A more appropriate posture. Razor cooed. On your knees. Hesitation. Then, Statham obeyed, dropping to the cold concrete. Humiliation seared his insides. Yet Leo's terror eclipsed his own shame. Razor stalked closer, eyes glittering with menace. He drew back his foot, preparing a crippling blow to Statham's head. But before the impact, a figure hurtled from the shadows. Leo. Summoning a wellspring of courage, Leo swung a length of pipe he'd concealed, connecting sharply with the Viper's forearm. The gun skittered across the floor. The Viper bellowed. His attention fractured for a crucial instant. At an instant Statham seized. Exploding to his feet, a primal roar ripped from his throat. He propelled Razor against a steel girder with bone-jarring force, the warehouse trembling from the impact. Razor slumped, consciousness fled. Statham retrieved the fallen weapon, pivoting towards the remaining Vipers. Their bravado evaporated, replaced by naked fear. Get out! Statham rasped, his voice a low, guttural threat. Now, like vermin fleeing a failing structure, the Vipers vanished into the shadows. Statham gathered Leo into a fierce embrace. You okay? Leo nodded, burying his face in Statham's coat. I was terrified, he mumbled. I know, Statham murmured, his voice thick with emotion. But you were brave. Unbelievably brave. He stepped back, his expression hardening as he regarded the inert form of Razor. He located Razor's phone, extracting it from his pocket. Scrolling through the contacts, he stopped at one labeled Blackwood. Councilman Blackwood? Statham said, disgust coating his words. Time for a little chat, I think. He pressed the call button. 2 rings. Then a polished voice answered. Razor? What is it? I ordered you not to contact me unless. Blackwood trailed off, a hint of unease creeping into his tone. Not Razor, Councilman. Statham's voice was like glacial ice. Someone who knows more about your little enterprise than you'd prefer. Silence hung heavy on the line. What are your demands? Blackwood finally spat, barely concealing his rage. No demands, Statham stated. Just wanted you to know your secret is out. And I intend to share it widely. He severed the connection, tossing the phone onto Razor's prostrate figure as Statham guided Leo from the warehouse. A polished black sedan glided to a halt at the entrance. Madame Chien emerged. Her face a serene mask, she observed their departure. Her eyes narrowing. A flicker of something complex played across her features. A trace of amusement mingling with a calculating spark. She activated her own phone, initiating a call. The paradigm has shifted, she announced, her voice soft yet decisive. Prepare for a revised proposition. A new beginning. The air, heavy with jasmine and the threat of violence, pressed down Madame Chien. Her expression a serene facade, indicated the sleek black car. The vehicle awaits, Mr. Statham. Leo will find safety now. Statham remained still, his gaze locked on Chien. He noticed the minute clench of her jaw, the almost invisible dart of her eyes toward the alley's maw. Her eagerness felt manufactured. Her offer of protection too swift. He knew her allegiance was fluid, dependent on personal gain. Safety under whose aegis, Madame Chien? He inquired, his voice a gravelly murmur. Her composure fractured, revealing the steel beneath. The dragons. They appreciate the worth of fealty. Of assets. Her fingers toyed with the jade pendant adorning her throat. Loyalty bought and sold like merchandise. Statham retorted, advancing a step. Leo is not a commodity to be traded. And I believe he would vehemently agree. From the alley's inky depths, figures materialized. Their countenances hard, the glint of steel catching the streetlight's orange haze. The dragons, Chien had exposed her true colors. A mirthless chuckle escaped Statham. Hardly surprising. Leo, clutching Statham's leg, whimpered softly. Statham knelt, his hand a reassuring weight on the boy's thin shoulder. Eyes closed. Leo. This will conclude swiftly. The lead dragon pounced, a coarse blade aimed at Statham's jugular. Statham flowed aside, the attacker stumbling past, off-balanced, at a swift chop to the nape, and the man became a heap on the grimy pavement. The others surged ahead. A tide of desperation and avarice. Statham moved with uncanny alacrity. He became a maelstrom of calculated force, each movement efficient, each strike precise. He disarmed, incapacitated, never killing, leaving behind a trail of sprawling, groaning forms. Madame Chien observed in stunned disbelief as her carefully constructed machinations unraveled before her. She had miscalculated drastically. She had underestimated Statham's ferocity, the depth of his dedication to safeguarding the child. As the last dragon slumped to the ground, Chien's composure crumbled entirely. This outcome was avoidable, Statham stated, his voice flat, devoid of inflection. A different choice was available. He retrieved the discarded blade, examining its unsharpened edge. But some souls are too accustomed to dwelling in the murk. He placed a call to the authorities, requesting confidentiality. When speaking with the police, sirens began to wail far off, escalating in volume. The ensuing days dissolved into a haze of forms and consultations with social services. Leo remained glued to Statham, his anxiety a palpable thing. Statham grappled with the boy's constant nearness, his acute neediness, his evident vulnerability. Yet, beneath the surface, he detected a nascent strength, an ember of resilience. Eventually, a foster home was secured. A kindly couple, warmth evident in their eyes, resided on a small farm outside the city's sprawl. They felt right as Statham drove Leo toward their home. The boy remained mute, his small hand clasped tightly in Statham's. Upon arrival, the couple received them with open affection. The woman kneeled, her voice soothing and gentle. "Hello, Leo. It's a pleasure to meet you. We have a pony and a cat, and a room all your own." Leo tarried, his gaze flitting between Statham and the woman. Then, tentatively, he extended his hand and took hers. Statham experienced a twinge, a strange confluence of solace and sorrow. It was the moment. He watched as Leo was guided inside, the woman's arm draped across his slight shoulders. The boy glanced back once, a glimmer of gratitude illuminating his features. Statham nodded, a silent pledge to be present should he be needed. He drove back to his isolated cabin, the quiet oppressive. The world felt diminished. He threw himself into perfunctory chores, splitting wood, cleaning his firearms. He sought to reclaim the isolation he'd once cherished, but a fundamental shift had occurred. He caught himself constantly reaching for his phone, half expecting a communication from Leo. He revisited their concise exchanges in his mind, scrutinizing them for veiled meanings, seeking reassurance that he had made the correct decision. One twilight, as the sun descended below the horizon, daubing the sky with swathes of coral and violet, Statham sat on his porch, a steaming mug of coffee cradled in his hands. He pondered Leo, the apprehension he'd witnessed in his eyes, the fortitude he had unearthed. He had rescued the boy from the dragon's grasp, but Leo, in turn, had rescued him. He had evoked in Statham a forgotten capacity for compassion, for empathy, for human connection. He had eroded the ramparts Statham had so painstakingly erected, exposing a frailty he had long suppressed. Statham recognized that a return to his former self was impossible. He was irrevocably changed. marked by the fleeting yet profound bond he had forged with Leo Maxwell. Danger would continue to lurk in the world, but he now knew that hope existed within it as well, and sometimes, that alone was sufficient. He closed his eyes. The memory of Leo's youthful visage imprinted in his mind. He would carry it with him always, a reminder that even in the darkest recesses, a fresh start remained achievable.